Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I know you're here because you've felt it, that longing for someone you miss, but the silence between you and them feels like an unspoken wall. You've thought about reaching out, you've wanted to reconnect, but something always stops you. It's that fear of awkwardness, the hesitation that paralyzes you before you even send the first message. I get it. It's like there's this voice in your head telling you, what if they don't feel the same way anymore? What if it's just too awkward? And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to act, doesn't it? You begin to imagine that reconnecting might be forced or uncomfortable, and that fear holds you back even though deep down you know it's not what you want. You miss them, but you're trapped in this loop of doubt, wondering if it's all worth it. But here's the thing, that fear is completely normal. It's part of being human. We fear rejection, discomfort and change. We fear that the bond we once shared might not exist anymore, that the person we once were with them has somehow faded away. But the truth is, the fear of reconnecting is often far worse than the reality of it. And the longer we stay silent, the bigger that fear grows, until it feels impossible to break through. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It takes courage to reach out, especially when you've been apart for so long. But it's also a reminder that sometimes the things that scare us the most are the things worth pursuing. You don't have to be perfect when you reach out. It's okay if it's awkward at first. That's just part of the process. What matters is that you take that first step. The connection you've been missing is still there, waiting to be rekindled. If you've ever found yourself hesitating, wondering if the awkwardness will be too much to bear, I want you to remember that you're not alone. In the comments, tell me if you've ever been in that situation. What held you back from reaching out? Let's start a conversation about the real human emotions that come with trying to reconnect. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear from you. Let's dive into how we can face the fear of awkwardness and rebuild those meaningful connections. Number 1, they're waiting for a sign from you. When someone misses you but doesn't reach out, they might be waiting for a sign from you. This silent dance of hesitation can be one of the most emotionally charged moments in any relationship. You both feel the tension, the longing, the hope, but neither of you is willing to make the first move. Perhaps one person has already extended themselves before, and now they feel as if the ball is in the other person's court. Or maybe it's a matter of uncertainty, pride, and fear. Fear of rejection, fear of showing too much, fear of being vulnerable. So you wait, they wait. And both of you remain caught in the same emotional limbo. It's a situation many of us have experienced at some point, whether in a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even within a family. You know they miss you. You can feel it, the quiet ache, the emotional distance. But they haven't reached out, and neither have you. You wait for them to take that first step, hoping they'll prove that they care enough to bridge the gap. It's a dangerous game, because as time passes, the silence only grows louder, and the space between you feels wider. It's almost as if you both are testing each other, silently asking, do you care enough to break the silence? Let's think about a real-life scenario, perhaps a situation you can relate to. Imagine someone you've known for years. You've shared countless memories, laughed together, been there for one another during difficult times, but recently things have changed. Maybe you haven't spoken in weeks, or perhaps you've noticed that your messages aren't being answered the way they once were. You miss them. You want to reach out, but you're waiting. You're waiting for them to make the first move. If they really care about me, you think, they'll reach out first. The days drag on. The silence stretches out. and the longing in your chest grows stronger. But neither of you makes a move. It's easy to fall into this pattern, thinking that if you wait long enough, the other person will feel the same urgency to reconnect. In truth, both of you may be feeling the exact same way, but neither of you is willing to take that emotional risk. There's the fear of being vulnerable, the worry that reaching out first could be seen as too eager, too desperate. The fear of being rejected or ignored is so strong that it paralyzes both of you. What if you reach out and they don't respond the way you hope? What if they've moved on, or worse, what if they never really cared as much as you thought they did? These fears prevent action and keep you both stuck. This is where emotional reciprocity comes into play. In human relationships, there is an unspoken expectation that emotional investment is mutual. If one person has made the effort in the past, it's natural to feel that the other should step up next. But what happens when neither person moves? Both feel the sting of missed connection, but neither wants to risk the emotional vulnerability of reaching out first. This is what makes the waiting game so painful. It's the emotional stalemate, where both people remain emotionally unavailable, yet both are silently hoping the other will be the one to make the first move. The idea of waiting also brings with it a sense of self-doubt and insecurity. You question whether the other person even values you as much as you value them. If they really cared, why haven't they texted or called me? What if I'm not important to them anymore? This internal dialogue eats away at your confidence. You might start to wonder if reaching out will make you seem too needy, too much of a bother. It's almost as if you're putting yourself in a position where you're handing over your emotional power to the other person. You're waiting for them to make you feel worthy of their attention and love. But in doing so, you lose a sense of control, and it feels like you're at the mercy of their actions. This dynamic creates an emotional deadlock, where neither person wants to expose themselves to the vulnerability of taking the first step. But in doing so, both are left in emotional isolation, stuck in a space where you both long for connection, but are too afraid to risk being the one who reaches out first. It's the agony of wanting to repair a bond that feels broken, but not knowing how to take the first step. From a Stoic perspective, this waiting game can be viewed as a surrender of your own emotional agency. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, famously wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote speaks directly to situations like this. When you wait for someone else to reach out, you're allowing your emotional state to be dictated by someone else's actions. You are handing over your peace of mind to external circumstances. Stoicism teaches that you should not place your emotional well-being in the hands of others. You can't control whether the other person reaches out, but you can control how you respond to the situation. You can choose to take the initiative, not out of desperation, but because you understand that your emotional state is in your own hands. The Stoic approach would encourage you to act, not out of fear or desperation, but out of clarity and purpose. If you miss someone, reach out, even if it feels vulnerable. If the other person doesn't respond as you hope, at least you've taken control of the situation and acted according to your own values, not based on fear of rejection. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In this situation, you may feel rejected or ignored, but your response to the situation is what ultimately defines your peace. You can choose to remain passive, waiting, or you can decide to take control and act. Waiting for a sign from someone else leaves you in a place of emotional uncertainty. It prevents you from fully engaging with the reality of the relationship. Instead of sitting in limbo, Act from a place of understanding that you cannot control others, but you can control your actions. If you reach out, you allow yourself the freedom to express how you feel, without fear or hesitation. If the other person responds, you reconnect. If not, at least you know you've done your part and you can move forward without regret. Ultimately, the question is, are you willing to risk vulnerability for the possibility of reconnection? Or will you let fear and uncertainty keep you from acting? Waiting for a sign is a form of emotional inaction. Break free from it and take control of your emotional well-being. Don't let the silence define you. Take the first step, even if it feels scary. What's your experience with waiting for someone to reach out? Have you been in this situation before? Feel free to share your thoughts below. Number 2, they're stuck in the past, unable to move forward. Sometimes the person who misses you doesn't reach out because they are stuck in the past, clinging to memories of when things were easier, simpler, or better. It's not that they don't think about you or wish they could reconnect. It's that they're afraid of confronting how much has changed. They don't want to reopen old wounds, revisit the pain, or face the reality of how different things are now. They long for the idealized version of the past, the version where everything seemed perfect, and they can't move beyond that. Imagine you've had a deep relationship that once meant the world to you. You laughed together, supported each other through tough times, and shared so many unforgettable memories. But over the years, things changed. Life happened, people grew, drifted apart, and priorities shifted. The connection that once felt effortless now feels strained. Messages go unanswered, phone calls are avoided, and both of you find yourselves caught in the silence. Now, imagine that someone is missing you. You can feel it in the way they scroll through your old photos on social media or reread the messages you exchanged in the past, wishing things were as they once were. They long for the days when it felt natural to pick up the phone and talk about anything and everything, when you were always there for one another. But here's the thing. They miss the idea of who you were back then, not necessarily who you both are now. They're stuck in that version of the friendship that existed in the past, the one where there were no awkward silences, no unresolved tension, and no distance. They idealize that time and wish they could go back, but they can't. The friendship, just like both of you, has changed, and instead of confronting the change, they avoid it. They fear what might happen if they reach out. What if things feel too awkward? What if the spark isn't there anymore? What if the conversation is strained or full of things left unsaid? The fear of reopening old wounds is powerful. When they look back, they might remember moments of hurt, or feel guilty about the things left unsaid, or regret the way things ended. They might fear that reaching out means they'll have to face the things that went wrong. They want the warmth of the past, but they don't want to deal with the messiness of the present. It's easier for them to scroll through old photos, seeing the two of you at your best, than it is to reach out and risk confronting the reality of how much has changed. The past seems so much more comfortable. It's a safe place, but the truth is, they're not just missing you, they're missing the version of themselves and the version of you that existed in that time. The real, current you, who you've both become over the years, is harder to face because it's more complicated. It requires growth, vulnerability, and sometimes an emotional risk they aren't ready to take. This dynamic can feel incredibly frustrating for the person on the other side, the one who's waiting, wondering if the other person even cares. You can sense that they miss you, that they're holding on to something from the past, but they can't seem to let go. And as time passes, you both get more stuck. The silence becomes heavier, the space between you more awkward, and both of you are left wondering if the other will ever make the first move. In a situation like this, you might wonder if they still think about you. And of course, they do. But they aren't just holding on to memories of you, they're holding on to the past. The relationship, the version of you both back then, feels like something safe and known. It's easier to live in the memory of something that was than to face the potential discomfort of something new, something different. They miss the feeling of being close to you, but they're not sure how to reconnect in a way that feels authentic. This is a powerful example of nostalgia, a psychological force that distorts the past. Nostalgia makes us long for times when things felt simpler, when we were younger, when life didn't feel so complicated. But in reality, those memories are often idealized. We forget the struggles, the misunderstandings, the moments that were difficult. Nostalgia can trap us in an emotional time warp, preventing us from moving forward. The person who misses you but is afraid to reach out may be caught in that time warp, frozen in the idea of what you once had. But this nostalgia isn't always about what's real. It's about the way things made them feel in the past. It's about the emotional comfort of those moments, not about how things are now. In some cases, they're even afraid of the changes that have occurred in both of you. What if reaching out opens a floodgate of uncomfortable emotions, unresolved issues, or things better left unspoken? This fear of facing the present is what keeps them stuck. The past is comfortable, familiar, and safe. The present, however, is uncertain. What if you've changed too much? What if you've moved on? The fear of rejection, of feeling like they don't fit into your life anymore, can be overwhelming. It's easier to avoid the risk altogether by staying stuck in memories that are distorted by time. Stoicism teaches us that attachment to the past can hinder our growth. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics understood that we cannot control the past. We cannot change what has already happened, no matter how much we may wish we could. But we do have control over how we respond to it. Letting go of the past is not about forgetting it. It's about acknowledging that it's over and accepting the present as it is. The Stoics also understood that change is inevitable. Everything in life is temporary, and the idea of holding on to something that no longer exists can only bring suffering. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The person who misses you might be stuck in the past, but their emotional response to the situation is what truly matters. If they are able to accept change, to embrace the discomfort of the present, they can find a way to move forward. In the end, being stuck in the past only holds both people back. The person who misses you but can't reach out has to realize that change is a part of life. Yes, things have changed between you, but that doesn't mean reconnection is impossible. It simply means that the way forward might look different than it once did. If you've ever been in this situation, where someone you care about is emotionally stuck in the past, it can feel heartbreaking. You see their longing, their pain, but they can't seem to let go. Or maybe you've been the one stuck, unable to face how much has changed. How did you find a way to move forward? Was it easy to let go of the past and embrace the present? Share your thoughts and experiences below. Number 3. They're afraid it will be awkward. Imagine missing someone so much that your heart aches, but every time you think about reaching out, a wall of fear and uncertainty stops you. It's not that you don't want to reconnect. You do, desperately. But the thought of how awkward it might feel, how forced the conversation might be, paralyzes you. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to break that silence. You keep asking yourself, what if we don't click like we used to? What if the silence between us becomes unbearable? You miss their presence, but the fear of making things uncomfortable holds you back. This is the deep human struggle of vulnerability. When you've shared parts of yourself with someone, your thoughts, your dreams, your secrets, there's a certain intimacy in that connection. But the longer time passes, the more fear of awkwardness takes root. It's not just about the potential for uncomfortable silence. It's about the fear that the bond that once felt so easy and natural might not be there anymore. The anxiety you feel about reconnecting is rooted in something called anticipatory anxiety. This is when your mind races ahead to all the things that could go wrong. You start replaying the worst-case scenarios. What if they've changed so much that we don't even recognize each other anymore? What if we don't have anything to talk about? What if we've both moved on from the connection we once had? These fears spiral, and as the days pass, it becomes easier to do nothing than to face the discomfort of reconnecting. The silence between you grows, and with it, the imagined gap widens until it feels almost impossible to bridge. Here's where it becomes even more emotional. It's not just the fear of awkwardness that holds you back, it's also the fear of loss. Time has passed, and both of you have likely changed. Your lives have gone in different directions, and the person you were when you last spoke may not even be the same anymore. The reality of this change, of seeing a new version of someone you once knew so well, feels like an overwhelming challenge. You wonder, what if they don't remember me the way I remember them? What if the version of us that felt so right is now just a distant memory, impossible to reclaim? The fear of this change, this loss of what you once shared, is paralyzing. You both miss each other, but you're afraid of confronting the reality that the connection might not feel the same, or worse, it might not exist at all. It's a heartbreaking scenario. You both want to reconnect, but you're too afraid to take that first step, too afraid of facing the truth that things have changed, even though you long for the closeness you once had. Imagine two people who were inseparable in college, who shared laughter, support, and their deepest fears, drift apart as life pulls them in different directions. One moves to a new city, the other gets caught up in a demanding job. Over time, their communication becomes less frequent until it stops altogether. Months pass, and neither one of them reaches out. They both think about the other, but the fear of reconnecting looms large. What if it's awkward? What if we don't click anymore? These thoughts consume them. The silence between them grows, and the imagined distance between them feels insurmountable. The bond they once had seems impossible to revive, and so they wait. But in reality, they are both waiting for the other to act, stuck in a loop of fear and uncertainty, when all they really want is to rekindle what they had. This is where Stoic philosophy offers insight. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The fear of awkwardness, the anticipation of discomfort, those are inevitable. We can't avoid them. But what we can control is how we respond. Reaching out despite the fear of awkwardness is an act of bravery and authenticity. It's a choice to face the discomfort head-on, knowing that it's a temporary part of the process, not the end of the connection. The Stoic mindset encourages us to accept discomfort as a natural part of life, rather than something to avoid. In the case of reconnecting with someone you miss, the discomfort of that first awkward moment is part of the journey. It's not a sign that the relationship is doomed. It's simply a moment to embrace. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The fear of awkwardness is the very thing that stands in your way. But instead of seeing it as an obstacle, see it as the path forward, an opportunity to reclaim a connection, to act with courage, and to embrace the vulnerability that makes relationships meaningful. In the end, it's important to remember that the pain of not reaching out, the loneliness, the regret, the what-ifs, can often be much greater than the brief discomfort of facing an awkward moment. If both people are willing to reconnect, the bond can shift, evolve, and grow in new ways. The fear of awkwardness may be real, but it doesn't have to hold you back from experiencing the joy of rekindling a relationship that has always been worth the effort. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you realize that reconnecting, even if it feels awkward at first, is worth the effort. Remember, the fear you're feeling is natural, but it doesn't have to control you. Taking that first step can lead to healing, growth, and renewed connections. If you've been holding back from reaching out, don't let fear stop you any longer. If this resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on navigating life's challenges. You've got this.